Silence is powerful. When you stop talking to someone, especially a man who once had your attention, it creates a shift, an emotional, psychological, and even personal awakening. This isn't about playing games. It's about reclaiming your value and understanding the impact of your absence. Let's break down 6 key thoughts that often cross his mind when you go silent and why this silence can be your strength. The moment communication stops, the shift feels immediate and unfamiliar to him. He was used to your presence, your messages lighting up his phone, your attention filling the gaps in his day, your consistency creating a sense of comfort he may not have even recognized. When that suddenly disappears, it disrupts his routine in a way that forces him to notice. What once felt normal now feels like something is missing, and that absence becomes impossible to ignore. His mind begins searching for answers. He replays recent conversations, small moments, even things that seemed insignificant at the time. He wonders if there was something he said, something he didn't say, or something he should have done differently. Silence creates space for reflection, and in that space, he starts analyzing his behavior more deeply than he ever did while you were still present and available. There's also a level of confusion that comes with it. If you were always responsive, always engaged, your sudden distance feels out of character. That inconsistency makes him question what changed. People are naturally drawn to patterns, and when a pattern breaks, it creates curiosity mixed with unease. He may check his phone more often, revisit old messages, or even hesitate before reaching out, unsure of how you might respond now. At the same time, your silence removes the reassurance he once had. When communication is constant, there's little need to question where he stands. But without that steady connection, uncertainty begins to grow. He no longer has easy access to your thoughts, your feelings, or your attention, and that lack of access makes him realize how much he relied on it. In many ways, your silence shifts the dynamic. Instead of you being the one present and predictable, he becomes the one trying to figure things out. That internal questioning, why the distance, why now, what does it mean, creates a level of awareness that constant communication often prevents. The moment doubt settles in, his thoughts begin to shift from confusion to concern. What once felt secure and predictable now feels uncertain, and that uncertainty leads him to a deeper question, whether you've truly walked away. When you were consistently present, he didn't have to think about losing you. Your attention felt guaranteed, almost like something he could rely on without effort. But once that presence disappears, he's forced to confront a possibility he may have never taken seriously before. He starts measuring his past actions against your silence, moments where he may have been distant, dismissive, or inconsistent begin to stand out more clearly. Things he once brushed off as minor suddenly feel significant. He wonders if he crossed a line without realizing it, or if he ignored signs that you were slowly pulling back. This kind of reflection isn't comfortable, but it becomes unavoidable when there's no communication to distract him from it. At the same time, a sense of loss begins to take shape, even if he doesn't fully admit it to himself right away. Losing someone isn't always about a dramatic ending. Sometimes it's the quiet absence that makes it real. Your silence removes the sense of control he once had over the situation. He can no longer assume that you'll be there when he decides to show up. That shift alone can make him feel like the balance has changed and not in his favor. He may also start comparing how things were before to how they feel now. The ease of talking to you, the familiarity of your presence, the way you showed interest, these memories begin to surface more often. What once felt ordinary now carries more weight because it's no longer part of his daily life. This contrast makes him question whether he took those moments for granted. Uncertainty has a way of amplifying emotions. The less he knows about where he stands with you, the more his mind fills in the gaps. He might wonder if this silence is temporary or permanent, if you're waiting for him to reach out, or if you've already decided to move on. That lack of clarity keeps him thinking, replaying, and questioning, because not knowing can feel heavier than any clear answer. Your silence doesn't just create distance, it creates contrast. He begins to notice that the version of you he was familiar with is no longer the same. Before, you were expressive, available, and emotionally present in a way that made things feel easy for him. Now, that energy is gone, replaced by something he doesn't fully understand. This change forces him to see you differently, not as someone predictable, but as someone evolving beyond what he expected. He starts questioning what caused this shift. Was it something gradual that he overlooked, or did something specific trigger it? The more he thinks about it, the more he realizes that your silence isn't random. It feels intentional, and that intention makes him take it more seriously. People don't usually change their behavior without a reason, and that realization pushes him to consider that you may have reached a point where you chose yourself over the connection. There's also a subtle realization that comes with this. He no longer feels in control of the dynamic. When you were consistent, he could decide when to engage, how much effort to give, and still feel like your attention would be there. Now that sense of control is gone. You're no longer reacting, no longer feeling the silence, and that independence shifts the balance in a way he can't ignore. He may begin to see you as stronger, more self-assured, even if he doesn't say it out loud. Your silence suggests that you're not chasing validation or waiting for his attention anymore. That alone can change how he perceives your worth. People often underestimate what they have when it's easily accessible, but when access is limited, perception changes. You become less available, and in his mind, that can translate into higher value. At the same time, this new version of you can feel unfamiliar, even intimidating. He doesn't know how to approach you the way he did before because the old patterns no longer apply. That uncertainty forces him to rethink his behavior if he wants to reconnect. Your silence becomes more than just a lack of communication. It becomes a statement, one that shows you're no longer operating the way you used to. And that realization stays with him as he tries to make sense of who you are now. When communication disappears, his mind doesn't stay quiet. It starts filling in the blanks. One of the most common assumptions he makes is that your attention has shifted somewhere else. Without access to your thoughts or daily life, he begins to imagine possibilities, and one of the strongest is that there might be someone new in the picture. This thought doesn't always come from evidence. It often comes from the simple fact that he no longer feels connected to you the way he once did. He reflects on how things used to be, how available you were, how easily conversations flowed, how naturally you gave your time and energy. When that suddenly stops, it's hard for him to believe it happened without a reason. Instead of immediately assuming it's about your personal growth or a conscious decision to step back, his mind may jump to the idea that someone else is now receiving the attention he once had. It's a conclusion driven more by uncertainty than reality, but it feels real to him. This thought can trigger a mix of emotions. There's curiosity, where he wonders who that person might be and how they entered your life. There's comparison, where he starts questioning if someone else is doing what he failed to do. And there's also a sense of discomfort because the idea of being replaced challenges his ego. Even if he never openly expresses it, the possibility alone can stay in his mind longer than he expects. At the same time, your silence gives him no way to confirm or deny these assumptions. That lack of clarity makes his imagination more active. Small details, like your absence online, a delayed response, or even nothing at all, can be interpreted in different ways. When people don't have answers, they tend to create their own, and those self-created stories often lean toward what feels most emotionally impactful. This shift in thinking also reinforces something important. You are no longer centered around him. Whether or not there's someone else becomes less significant than what the thought represents, that your world continues without his involvement. That realization alone can change how he views the situation because it forces him to accept that he's no longer the main focus of your attention. And that's not something he can easily ignore. At some point, the silence stops feeling like a temporary pause and starts to feel like a signal. He begins to consider that your absence might be a response to his lack of effort, and that realization can push him to rethink how he showed up. When everything was flowing easily, he may not have felt the need to go beyond the bare minimum. Your presence filled the space regardless. But now, with that presence gone, he starts to recognize that maintaining a connection actually requires intention. He reevaluates the way he communicated with you. Were his replies delayed or inconsistent? Did he take your attention for granted, assuming you would always be there? These questions begin to surface because your silence removes the comfort he once had. Without you bridging the gaps, he's left to see the imbalance more clearly. What felt acceptable before now seems insufficient. This shift can create a sense of urgency. If he believes there's still a chance to reconnect, he may feel the need to act differently than he did in the past, not out of pressure from you, but from the realization that the old approach didn't sustain the connection. He starts thinking about what it would take to regain your attention. More effort, more consistency, more presence. The idea of stepping up becomes less about impressing you and more about correcting what he now sees as his own shortcomings. There's also an internal conflict that can come with this. On one hand, he may want to reach out to break the silence and try to restore what was there. On the other hand, he may hesitate, unsure if it's too late or if his effort will even be received the same way. That hesitation often comes from the awareness that things have changed, and he can't simply return with the same energy and expect a different outcome. Your silence, in this sense, becomes a mirror. It reflects back to him the level of effort he was giving before and whether it was enough. For some, that reflection becomes a turning point, an opportunity to grow and show up differently. For others, it simply highlights what they were unwilling to do all along. As time passes and the silence remains unbroken, the reality of your absence begins to settle in more deeply. What once felt like a temporary gap now feels like something real, something he can't easily dismiss or distract himself from. In the past, your presence may have been woven into his routine so naturally that he didn't have to think about it. Now, that routine feels different, and the space you once filled becomes more noticeable with each passing day. He starts to feel the absence in subtle ways. Moments when he would normally reach out, share something, or simply talk now come with a pause. There's no immediate connection, no familiar response waiting on the other side. That absence isn't loud, but it's persistent. It shows up in quiet moments, in pravishki that no longer have the same outlet, and in the realization that something meaningful is no longer there. Memories begin to surface more often. Conversations, shared jokes, the way you understood certain things without needing much explanation, these details start to carry more emotional weight. When you're present, those moments can feel ordinary, but in your absence, they become reminders of what he no longer has access to. That shift in perspective can make him appreciate things he once overlooked. There's also a difference between distraction and genuine feeling. At first, he might try to stay busy to avoid thinking too much about the change. But silence has a way of cutting through distractions over time. When there's no new interaction to replace what's missing, he's left with his own thoughts. And in those moments, missing you becomes less about convenience and more about emotional recognition. He may not express it openly, and he might not even fully understand the depth of it right away, but the feeling is there. It's not just about the absence of conversation. It's about the absence of you, your energy, your presence, and the role you played in his life. That realization doesn't always come instantly, but once it does, it tends to stay because it's rooted in something real rather than something temporary. Stopping communication isn't about manipulation, it's about self-respect. It's about choosing peace over confusion, clarity over chaos. When you stop talking, you're not losing power, you're stepping into it.